Hey everybody, and welcome back to a new episode of the Sweet Baby Ray and Zorn Hub Show. I'm your co-host Ray Burrows.
I'm your other co-host Andrew Zinn or Andrew Zorn, whatever you prefer to say, ladies and gentlemen.
So busy week this week in sports, probably the busiest since we started this show.
It's been quite eventful, and I cannot complain.
Just a quick recap of the World Series because we're not going to actually touch on that much this week. We'll touch it next week when the series is winding down. Might be over by then too.
Might be over by then because the Phillies looking red hot.
The Phillies grab a 2-1 series lead after a shutout win in Philadelphia last night, 7-0, led by home runs from Rhys Hoskins and a mammoth shot by Bryce Harper.
5 home runs in total, I believe, was 3 or 5 runs off McCullers.
Yeah, and McCullers has been a really good pitcher in the postseason, but the last 2 starts he's made has been rough. But we're not going to start there today.
No, we're going to move ahead.
So if anyone knows, especially after listening to our special episode with Jay Nasty, shout out to Jay Nasty for coming on. I had a great time.
Really, it was a really good time having you, John. We definitely gotta have you on again. Great time having you on. Talking about our top 5 most disappointing teams. If you haven't given a listen yet, folks, you're gonna want to give it a listen. But right, the floor is yours for this one.
And you know from that list, I'm not a fan of these Brooklyn Nets.
No, you are not.
Brooklyn Nets yesterday announced that they are firing Steve Nash. They say they part ways, but let's be honest, it's a firing.
It's a fire.
I want to know, Zorn, what are your opinion on Steve Nash being fired by the Brooklyn Nets? 2-5 start this year. 2-5 start. 2-5
start, and they fire him after a win. And here's the thing: I had this team coming out of the East, and I don't know yet. I don't want to call them off yet.
I would say you're extremely skeptical.
I'm a little skeptical. I'm hesitant.
Close to pushing the button, the panic button.
I'm hesitant. The problem I have with the Nets was they talked a big talk about cleaning up their act this year. You know, you saw Kevin Durant request a trade. Kyrie wanted to be out. And then they kind of bring it back together. They also called out Nash in the process, and they don't want Nash there. But no, we're going to work around this. We're going to fix it. And you thought that would be indicative of them maybe switching up a culture, culture change, working on their personal lives. But no, and Steve Nash has been dealt a horrible hand in basketball. You would think it's great. He might have an ace, but he also has a 2. It's just like you're dealing with a locker room that's toxic, that's immature, and for a group of guys where it's not like they're rookies. They have experience. I felt bad for Steve Nash getting fired. It was not his fault. Now, yes, did he play-wise, did he do the best coaching he could? No, but because I think all the off-court fiascos took him away from it. I'm disappointed that this was Steve Nash's kind of, first big role in coaching, and that this is how he has to go out, is by being a coach who had 3 superstars at one point on a team that didn't win a chip. So, Ray, I know you have some things about Kyrie Irving. I will touch Kyrie Irving after you get involved into him. I'm not going to steal your thunder. But it's disappointing. Is it the right move? Maybe. I think this team does need a switch in leadership, but that's not because of the leader himself. It's because of, the soldiers not listening to the leader and being the downfall of his tenure. Ray, go ahead.
Well, I think it's important to note that 2 years and 7 games into Steve Nash's tenure, I still don't know if Steve Nash is a good basketball coach.
Yeah.
But I will say this. I'm leaning towards he's average at best as a basketball coach. But I will say this. Steve Nash did a great job in Brooklyn. When you think about all the things he had to deal with, dealing with a COVID-shortened season, dealing with, in the first year, they trade for James Harden. Remember, when he was hired, they only had KD and Kyrie. So now it's even the added expectations of adding James Harden. And then towards the end of the year, that Nets team that I think was so disappointing, injuries to both Harden and Kyrie, questions about whether Kyrie really wanted to play or not. Kyrie takes that in the next year. Kyrie takes that mysterious leave of absence. You lose Ime Udoka, who I will get to in a minute, to coach the Boston Celtics. Excuse me. Kyrie doesn't take the vaccine, so he can't play in New York City because New York City has all these vaccination rules. So Kyrie, is out here deciding when and where he wants to play, being a prima donna. And Harden demands a trade, and I don't blame Harden. I know a lot of people at the time blame Harden. I don't blame Harden. Harden's like, I'm not going to win a championship with Kyrie. This is a mistake. So they trade him for Ben Simmons. This is where I get lost. That trade, and I know they got Seth Curry too, but Seth Curry's been hurt for most of that tenure. Ben Simmons is a guy who also picks and chooses when he wants to play. So you're going to pair him with Harden. And I know you were talking big thing about spacing, but here's the thing, though. You can talk about spacing all you want. If Ben Simmons is averaging 6 points, they're going nowhere.
I agree.
And then Simmons doesn't play through the playoffs. And remember in the playoffs when he was like, well, he might be available to come play. He might be. You remember he hurt his back?
He chose not to play.
It's because, mental health. And I'm not saying mental health isn't important, but at the same time, that's not Steve Nash's fault. None of that is Steve Nash's fault. And on top of that, in the offseason, you have all these things like Kevin Durant demanding a trade if Marks and Nash aren't fired. Steve Nash is a scapegoat. Because last week, Kyrie Irving, and I'm going to touch Kyrie Irving here.
Go for it.
Posted a link to a movie full of anti-Semitic things saying that, the Holocaust didn't exist and it was a way for Jews and white people to keep the black race down. Steve Nash is a scapegoat for that. Steve Nash was fired because Kyrie Irving is causing such a stir that they needed another story. And Kyrie Irving, if I can touch on that, I'm calling for the Brooklyn Nets today. As someone, for those of you who don't know, I have Jewish blood on my dad's side. I have Jewish blood. My family are Jews from Russia. I'm calling Kyrie Irving to be released by the Brooklyn Nets. They should waive him today. They're not going to, and firing Steve Nash proves it. But Kyrie Irving, when you think about all the stuff they've allowed him to do, picking and choosing when he wants to play, still letting him come back this year after the debacle last year with the vaccine and taking the leave of absence to go to a birthday party. Kyrie Irving, the thing that bothers me about his comments are, everyone talks about Kyrie as an activist. An activist for the rights of African Americans. And that is very admirable. What I'm saying is, you can't then, in a city, and you know what New York City is the number one Jewish populated city. Not in the country, in the world. Brooklyn, the last time I checked, is in New York City. You're going to make these comments, and then when he was questioned about after the game, this is why the last 3 days he hasn't talked to the media. After the game, he said that he's being dehumanized because of what he did. You're dehumanizing my family, Kyrie. You're dehumanizing all the Jewish people in the world, all of them in New York. This is very, very, very symbolic of where Kyrie Irving's tenure, not only with the Nets, but his career has been. Zero accountability. This whole Nets team has zero accountability. It starts with Kyrie. He's been there the longest. And they've not letting him take any accountability whatsoever. So I think Adam Silver, who is also Jewish, by the way, thinking about how he responded to Myers Leonard so swiftly. How do you not suspend Kyrie Irving for a considerable amount of time, or at least fine him already? I think it's absurd, because let's be honest here. I'm not trying to start a race war because I know how serious it is. But if a white player, if Nikola Jokic, posted something that was racially insensitive to African Americans or to the black race, he'd be suspended the next day. And Robert Kraft, I know it was in response to Kanye, but putting that commercial up, anti-Semitism, and to come out and Kyrie's acting like he's being dehumanized, you got to be kidding me. So this firing of Steve Nash, he took a bullet for Kyrie Irving, which, let's be honest, I want to applaud Steve Nash for getting the hell out of there. That is probably the best thing that could happen to Steve Nash. And what makes it worse is, and Andrew, I'm done with Kyrie. I don't really want to talk about the disgusting behavior anymore. It's making me sick. It's making me upset. What bothers me about the Steve Nash thing is the rumors that within 3 hours, they were talking about hiring Ime Udoka, who was suspended for the Celtics for what they viewed as unprofessional conduct that violated team policy. So why are you going to, and suspend him for a whole year, so why are you going to bring him in to be a coach when you're trying to fan the flames? Look, from a basketball perspective, Udoka makes sense.
For basketball, yes. For management, no.
Makes no sense.
I'll go ahead on this one. I'll just say this real quick. I know in a lot of conservative circles, Kyrie was popular because of his vaccine stance. Do not show any support. No one should show any support to this man after the comments and tweets he's made, Especially when the media, listen, I'm not the biggest fan of the media. I don't trust the media. But when they were trying to hold him accountable, which is the media's job to question you, he just acted like a victim. When you are either victim blaming or marginalizing victims from what happened less than 100 years ago.
And not only that, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
No, you're good.
My last point about Kyrie, because the whole thing makes me really upset, is Kyrie Irving openly said, I'm not apologizing. What I did was right. What I said was right. I'm not apologizing if I think I'm right. I didn't mean to disrespect anyone's beliefs, though. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. You basically just said that the Holocaust didn't happen.
Yeah, it's absurd. I would tell Kyrie, you should go and walk through the Holocaust Museum in D.C. I've done it, and it's humbling. It is saddening. It is terrifying. When I walked through that museum, and the part that got me when I went through there was the train. You walk through the train, you see where hundreds of people are crammed into a room that's smaller than the room we're in now, right? We're in our basement, and our basement's, it's not a huge basement, but really compact room where hundreds of people were slammed into. When it was hot out, they didn't care. Many people died on the train ride to Auschwitz, to these concentration camps. And then the worst part, I know a lot of people say it's the shoes, seeing all the shoes of those who were murdered. The worst part with me was when they showed the pictures of the townspeople of that one town, I can't think of the name of it, in Europe, where it was a Jewish town, I believe, in Poland. I think it was like 99 or 95%, of the population was Jewish people. No one from that town survived. So when you're walking to the museum, you go through the 3 floors, and you see all these amazing photos of like families, their houses, them in holidays, churches. And when you finally get through the bottom part, you read the sign that says, no one from this town survived the Holocaust. And he's going to deny that. It's disgusting. It's frankly absurd that Adam Silver, who's been a great commissioner, has done nothing about a man denying the Holocaust. And let's talk about it. Cancel culture, whether you like it or not, has had a dramatic impact on society, especially with social media. But why are we picking and choosing now when we're using cancel culture? Oh, because Kyrie said it's okay, because he's, part of his talk is about a certain political issue that we're okay with. No, you got to look at the entirety of what Kyrie's saying. And the entirety is that, the one part of it is that he is saying the Holocaust didn't happen, he's denying it. Or he's saying, what happened with the Holocaust, it really is not that important. It's extremely important. So I encourage him to go to the museum. I encourage him to see the pain and suffering that an entire race went through because of the color of their skin. And let's not act like that didn't happen or desensitize it. It's important that today, and you're seeing it all over the place, people want to act like the Holocaust didn't exist. It did. Denying the Holocaust is disgusting. It's, inhuman. It's the lowest of lows you could do by acting like it's not real. And it's honestly, it's a problem in society that we're acting like this didn't happen. He should be punished. He should be fined. He should be cut. I wouldn't mind if he's gone from the league, damn it, because it's disgusting and it's not human. Okay? It's not becoming of an individual who says he stands for, civil rights activism. It's not. So, and you know what? If you don't like being grilled by the media, then don't post stupid shit online and then act like there's no consequences. It's rude, it's foul, it's disgusting. With that, I'm moving on.
If I can just wrap this up real quick, because this issue makes me, if you can't hear my voice, I'm actually pretty emotional about this topic. What makes me, I think something that's lacking in the world today is understanding. We all, we don't listen, we wait for our turn to talk. I think with Kyrie and the Jewish faith and the Christian faith is supposed to be, and the Muslim faith, they're all supposed to be based about forgiveness. Every religion out there, you want to throw at me Buddhism, you want to throw at me Confucianism, whatever. It's all about forgiveness. I can forgive Kyrie Irving, and the people can forgive Kyrie Irving. The thing that is stopping us from forgiving him is he went out there and acted like he did nothing wrong, and why is everyone so mad?
Yes.
That's the part I don't understand. So Kyrie Irving, who's an activist for black rights, which is important because the United States need to come to grips with its racist past.
Yes, I agree with that completely.
The problem I have with it is, how am I supposed to take your political activism seriously now? How am I? How am I supposed to take your activism when you don't understand what other people go through, but I have to understand what you go through? And look, I will never understand what you go through because I'm not an African American. I get it. You know what I mean?
But you don't tear down others in the interest for yourself.
But if you can't understand where I'm coming from, you can't expect me to understand where you're coming from. Because if I acted that way towards Kyrie Irving and his beliefs, it would be a completely different story.
Be a front.
And look, I believe in second chances. The problem I have with Kyrie Irving is there's no remorse. And this goes back to no accountability. I said it. And he got mad when the interviewer said that he was promoting it. Well, you put it on your platform, it's promoting it.
It clearly is. You have millions of followers. And here's what I get it. These athletes, when they came to the NBA, I didn't sign up to be an icon or an influence. I signed up to be an NBA player. Yes and no. Okay, you have been placed in a great opportunity to have a platform where you can affect people's lives directly. You got to use that smart. And yes, you're held to a higher standard than other people. And this standard, yes, like there are instances when it can be stressful. This one's not. You don't post that. You don't post that because it's wrong. And I can't find any sympathy because there is none. It's not like there's an ounce of it because what you posted makes no sense. It's denying an atrocity that happened, and you're acting like, well, I didn't promote it. You posted it on a page where you had millions of followers, and then those millions of followers are going to repost it and share with other millions of followers. Don't act like you didn't know what you did. Don't play coward now. Don't cry wolf. Man up. I'm calling on Kyrie. Apologize. Hold yourself responsible and make amends. Because it's the only way anyone's going to take you serious. And like touch on what Ray said, you're affecting the cause at which you stood for before in your past. You're a big advocate for minority rights and for Black Americans. That's an important thing. But no one's going to take you seriously if you're out there posting this stuff, man. You're hurting your reputation. You're hurting the cause which you're trying to fight for. All for what? For a conspiracy theory? For an opinion that's hurtful and detrimental to society. It's wrong. You need to apologize. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets fined. Wouldn't be surprised if he's let go or suspended.
They're not going to let him go.
But here's the thing. I'm really tired, and this is why if Adam Silver doesn't do anything, my respect for him drops immensely. You have to hold him to the same standard that you've held other players. Just because he's a star, a moneymaker, and he makes you money, doesn't let this go. That shouldn't change it. That's not right. That's not ethical. Okay? Just because there's a higher dollar sign on this issue doesn't mean it gets swept under the rug. No, ethics don't change because of the dollar amount. Also, no one's going to want to back your league financially if someone's out here making anti-Semitic comments. You're going to lose revenue. So don't act like, in the short term, we'll see consistent profits. Guess what? Long term, it ain't gonna last that way, Adam Silver. I'm telling you now. You need to do something about it now. You need to act up. You need to be a man and tell Kyrie what he said and posted was wrong, and you're being held accountable and you're being punished for your actions because it was wrong to the Jewish community. It was wrong to New York. Right?
I couldn't have said it any better. I want to thank Andrew for his professionalism in this. I know we joke around a lot on the show, but this is an issue that's very, very personal for me. And I want to thank you for your professionalism in this topic.
Always, right. Always.
And I think that's a good place to leave it. And we should move on to something not any, a little less sad, but not any less sad.
Well, this one I can be a little more,
joking,
not as serious, because this, the topic is serious with Kyrie. This one I can get a little more, animated with.
MSU, Michigan State University taking on its rival Michigan. And something that I was wrong about, there is only one tunnel. But the thing is, the hallway in which the incident happened, the video surfaced of up to 20 Michigan State players ganging up on 1 to 2 Michigan Wolverine players.
I believe 4 more players were suspended either yesterday or the day before.
If I can take the reins on this, Andrew.
Go for it.
All 4 of those players shouldn't be suspended. They should be expelled from the school. The reason for this is, watch the video, it's assault.
It's assault.
It's assault. One of the guys is taking off his helmet and swinging it on a guy who does not have a helmet on.
I saw that this morning.
And that player, who, I'm rooting for, is very similar name as me, Jaden McBurrows. Great last name. if I read this correctly on Michigan State Athletics website, he is 5'9.5", 162 pounds. Mm-hmm. And they are swinging a helmet. There are several guys who looked like defensive ends.
Yes.
They were big boys.
I know a linebacker and a DM were involved.
Stomping on them with cleats. Something to the point where he had to get, I think, upwards of 40 stitches. And, look, the universities need to do a better job of governing those tunnels, but that hallway didn't lead to either locker room. They were looking to fight. Mm-hmm. And I want to call out Mel Tucker. Now, Mel Tucker, I think, is a good coach. But this is an incident where you can lose locker rooms. You can not even lose locker rooms, lose control of the program. Mm-hmm. I want to go over something with Tucker because Tucker last year, he got a new deal. They wiped his deal clean, and they're like, you know what? Because he won 11-2 last year.
Yes.
And they're like, all right, we need to give him a new deal. We need to keep this guy. So they gave him a 10-year, $95 million contract extension.
He's currently sitting at 3-5, 7th.
But let's move on here.
7th place.
His first year as a head coach, because he was the interim head coach for your Jaguars back in 2011. Mm-hmm. But his first year as a collegiate head coach was in 2019 at Colorado. He went 5-7, making about 3.2. Not bad. The next year he gets hired by Michigan State, which was surprising at 5-7. In 1 year. In the COVID shortened year, he goes 2-5, making $5.5 million. And then last year, like I said, he goes 11-2, making $5.5 million. So they give him that 10-year, $95 million contract extension. Mind you, Tom Izzo. Michigan State is a basketball school, and Tom Izzo is a basketball icon. 7 Final Fours, a national title in 2000. How much? Mel Tucker's making $9.5 million. How much do you think Tom Izzo's making?
Not sure.
He's making 6.2. After all these years, he's still making 6.2.
Oh God.
And mind you, Tom Izzo donates about $2 million a year to the university, back to the university, whether it be student life centers, just super involved. That's why Tom Izzo's never left. So you're going to give this guy who's been there for 2 years and had one winning season, $9.5 million, at a basketball school. And look, I'm not saying Mel Tucker's a bad coach. I think it's too early to judge either way. Last year he had a great year and he did a great job. That contract looks terrible right now. Year 1. And look, you're just suspending these players. That's basically saying, okay, we suspended them. That way we don't have to take a look at it. We made our decision and we can't get yelled at. No, you gotta, I don't care if that is, prime Gale Sayers. I don't care if that's, Kirk Cousins, whoever, that went, it's just disgusting that they're not, how are they not dismissed from the program? You think Nick Saban tolerates that?
No.
You think Kirby Smart tolerates that? You think Dabo Sweeney, Jimbo Fisher, any of these guys tolerate that at big name programs? So Michigan State is clearly moving to try to beat. You think Jim? And look, I've been hard on Jim Harbaugh in the past. I think he's a hard head. I think he's a good football coach, but he's a hard head. Mm-hmm. Jim Harbaugh shouldn't let this go.
No.
Jim Harbaugh, 2 of his players, they were assaulted.
They were hospitalized.
I mean, I would be ringing I would challenge Mel Tucker in the middle of the field.
I'll go ahead with this one.
Go ahead.
So, I played football for, I think, 9 years now, something like that. And it's my last year. With that said, when there's a mentality with football that you're going to war, it's like a gladiator fight. And no, I know you're not going to like this.
No, I'm processing.
And it's on the field, right? It's in between those white lines. It's in between the whistle. Anything after is unacceptable. Anything that happens during can be understood. It's a very emotional game. Guys want to act all big and tough. Football players are pretty emotional, right? I'm just going to be completely honest with you. And on Saturday, you got your ass handed to you. You lost 29-7. And some people say, well, that's not a bad. You lost by 3 scores. To me, that's an ass whooping.
Mind you, Michigan State, I believe, beat Michigan last year to knock Michigan out of
they did
real serious contention.
Yes, and your rushing offense, your leading rusher only had 7 carries for 22 yards. Michigan State, 33 carries for 177 yards. They ran the ball up and down on you, almost 300 yards rushing. And I get it. You got your butt kicked. You lost to a heated rivalry. And there is heated rivalries in college football. Up there is Michigan State.
Can I butt in on that?
Within the state of Michigan, yes.
I will say this. That game means more to Michigan State than it does Michigan. Michigan has to play Ohio State. And that game means a lot more to
Ohio State,
Michigan
Penn State, stuff like that. I get it. But within the state of Michigan State Michigan, not this year, but in previous years, has always been a heated game.
Well, it's supposed to be this year. Michigan State has completely unraveled this year.
Yes. But getting back to my point.
Sorry, I didn't mean that.
No, you're good. When the clock hits 0 and the score's final, it's over. Any excuse for any behavior between the lines, between the whistle, it's gone. Okay? You have to accept what happened. They were the better team. They beat you. Now, a lot of people are saying, well, this is because of the tunnel. No, it's not. That tunnel exists, I believe, the stadium's been up for 95 years. Mm-hmm. There was heightened security there. There was more Michigan staff and Michigan State staff than they had in previous games. There was police presence there. And when I watched the video, especially of the staff and, of officers there, it looked like they didn't want to intervene. I'll be completely honest. It looked as if they allowed it to happen. Oh, we're trying to protect our guys. We're trying to protect their guy. We're not trying to really protect their guys. And when you have two players who walk into the same tunnel earlier than the rest of the team, they didn't go in as a team, but they share the same hallway, and two of them get jumped. It's disgusting. It's not toughness. It's not, oh yeah, we come out here to fight. No, it's not a sense of mindset at that point because the game's over. It's selfishness.
I want to point out two jumped to the point where their football careers could end.
Could end. Who is it? Is it McBurrows? He has over 50 stitches?
Yeah.
Over 50 stitches.
For a guy who's 162 pounds soaking wet.
And I've seen the video. I saw the one today. One guy took his helmet off and was swinging it.
And the other guys are cleaning people. And you're going to how are you going to put these guys back? I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
No, you're good.
How are you going to put these guys back in your program?
They should be expelled from the school, and the NCAA should not allow them to play another down of football. And some people are going to say that's drastic, that's too much. No, it's not. And here's why. I was recently watching a clip from Deion Sanders. It was relating to the death of the one rapper, Takeoff, I believe. Yeah. So from Migos, it's a pretty sad story.
R.I.P.
R.I.P. He said he had a great point. We got to change addresses, and that's what it is. I get it. I don't understand the perspective that some of these guys came from growing up. I don't. I can never understand it. But when you go to college football, you get the chance of a lifetime to play for a D1 program. And I get Michigan State ain't doing the best this year, but it's a D1 program.
And get your education basically paid for.
It's not a fight all the time, guys. It ain't life or death after the clock hits 0. And Deion's right. We got to start changing how we act. And you know what? That tough guy mentality of I'm going to beat him up after a loss, that ain't tough. That's weakness. That's immaturity. That's childish. And these guys should not be allowed to play another down of football for the rest of the year at least. And really, they should be expelled from the program, and no school should want to touch these players because they lack leadership, they lack maturity, and they lack decency. That's the important part. You don't jump someone because they beat you in a fair and square contest. I don't know where civility has gone in our generation, right? I don't know where it's gone in society, but clearly it's jumped out the damn window. And Michigan State, the program, looks horrible for this. And Jim Harbaugh has every right to be pissed at what happened and call for these guys' careers, call for Tucker's job. It's unacceptable, and it starts from the top up. It's a leadership thing. Michigan State has no leadership. There's no accountability within inside of it. And you can say, well, that's not fair as one incident. No, this incident shows that enough. If there was leadership, there was discipline, those players wouldn't even think about jumping two players from an opposing team that just beat them fair and square.
Well, it shows the lack of leadership enough for the fact that there are people who are exploring the fact that Mel Tucker could be fired with cause.
Yes.
And voiding that $95 million contract, because I think Michigan State knows it's a bad contract.
Yes.
I agree with everything you said, and I can just point out one thing before we move on. Mm-hmm. Next year's game, Michigan is going to make a statement.
Yes.
You think that there isn't going to be a...
You thought 29-7 was bad, huh?
You don't think there's going to be a physical aspect to that game? You think Jim Harbaugh isn't going to get his team ready? You know what I would do? I'm being dead serious here. I know it might be in poor taste. I would personally show them the video before the game next year. They did this to one of your brothers. They did this. Go out there and beat the living shit out of them.
Well, if Michigan State doesn't recruit well, and they have a season similar to the one they're having this year.
Well, it doesn't matter. Michigan's going to get recruits anyway. Mm-hmm. So even if Michigan State gets recruits, anybody can blow anybody out at that level at any point. Remember Maryland, Penn State 2 years ago? What I'm saying is Michigan State is going to be a team. They're like, Michigan is, not Michigan State.
Michigan will be a team playing possessed.
Because they're going to be playing for those guys whose careers might be ruined. So I think this is not going to go away.
No, it's going to be around for a bit. It needs to be addressed. Fines and punishments, more than just suspensions, need to be handed out. Tucker deserves to lose his job. At first, when I heard Jim Harbaugh calling for a job, I was like, what are you doing, man? Like, it's not his, Then I saw the video. Then I realized,
then the suspension.
This was allowed under his watch.
And then the suspension.
For 2 games?
Look, I would have a lot more respect for Mel Tucker right now. And look, I'm not saying that I'm not going to call for his job, but I'm going to say he's on thin ice.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, Mel Tucker, I would have respect for him if he would have just thrown him out of the program.
Well, here's Austin. The guys who did that, good luck getting drafted. Good luck. No one wants you in the locker room. That's how you act.
Get a job. Do anything, especially if a police report's filed.
Yeah. No one's going to want you. You've ruined your shot at a future.
At anything.
And congratulations for what? Because you got your ass kicked? Yeah. That was really worth it, guys. Really smart and mature decision we made there.
Well, moving on. We're going to stick with college football. A lot of college football talk this week.
Mm-hmm.
Brian Harsin, who was the head coach at Boise State for all those years, took the job at Auburn after Gus Malzahn was let go, has been fired in the middle of year 2 with the Auburn Tigers football program after a loss this week to Arkansas. 9-12 record in less than 2 years. Lost the bowl game last year to go 6-7. First losing season since 2013 for Auburn. Harsin's buyout is $15.3 million, but 50% of that has to be paid by the end of November. Zorn, how do you feel about Brian Harsin getting fired?
I think it's too early. Auburn, at least for my lifetime, I've always looked up to Auburn. I've always liked them as a program, mainly because they always gave Alabama a run for their money. There's many fond memories of them, especially when they returned the field goal and beat Alabama and shocked them. And I like their underdog mentality as a program. I think it's a little too early to fire him. Personally, I think you really can't you really can't look at a coach's tenure within 2 years, two years, and determine we're going to fire him unless it's a really poor performance. And I think a lot of coaches, there's a 3 or 4 year rule with them. You get 3 years to show us that you've made improvements. It might not be record-wise, but that our roster is better than when it was when you first started here, that you've developed the players correctly, and then for the following year or 2, you're going to have a season where we're a winning team and we're making a push. I don't think he's been given a fair shot with that, Brian Harsin. I think I get it. It's very competitive now with NIL and trying to get guys to recruit them for your team and also with development. But everyone's about the Arkansas's loss. That's a good team, Arkansas. I'm being completely honest. I believe they're ranked now, or they should be ranked, or they're getting close. They're 5-3. They're a good team. You lost 41-27.
They were ranked several times at the beginning of the season.
Talented team. It's not like this wasn't expected, but I get it. Not playing up to the standard that's associated with that college in recent years. But you got to give them a fair shot. You don't fire a coach who I think is doing a decent job and he needs more time. I mean, now here's the thing: when you fire a coach like that, it just restarts the whole rebuild. Now you're behind another year or 2. And the new coach has to get established. His first recruiting class might not be as strong because it's his first year. He doesn't know the state as well. He doesn't know the university as well. Unless he's a big draw head coach, which I don't know if they're going to be able to get one. I think it sets the program back. I would have kept him and then reassess after the season's over.
So I'm just going to say this. Brian Harsin did not deserve to be fired. So they fired Gus Malzahn. So remember, Gene Chizik was the coach. And when you talk about Auburn and the standard, right, of Auburn football of our lifetime and how you've always looked up to them, you've looked up to them for 2 moments. Cam Newton winning a national title and winning the Heisman because Cam Newton had a season possessed. And the Chris Davis kick 6, which I agree, 2 big moments in our lifetime in college football. The problem you have with Auburn is since they beat Alabama, they now expect to beat Alabama every year. Auburn football program has turned very unrealistic. It might be in the 5 most unrealistic programs right now.
Yes.
And the problem Auburn has is they fired Gus Malzahn, who, led them to several bowl games, very good coach. He got a job right away with UCF. But they fired him. And his buyout, mind you, this is the coach right before Harsin. They're still paying his buyout of $21.37 million. Harson's buyout, $15.3 million, 50% of that is due by the end of November. So if you go out and you make, this is one hire they have to get right. If Auburn goes out there and whiffs and they fire another coach, it might bankrupt their entire athletic department. Not just the football team, the athletic department. And mind you, the AD, they just hired a new AD from Mississippi State. Cohen, he came over. But the unrealistic expectations of Auburn, when this guy's in year 2, it usually, I think in college football, it should be a rule of 4. Guys come in, develop, because a lot of those players that were there when Malzahn was there left with him to UCF. So Harsin didn't have the base of a team to work with. So with the transfer portal, but you see guys in the transfer portal, they want to go to Alabama, Georgia, and Florida. They want to go to LSU. They want to go to Texas A&M. They dominate in that regard. And the thing is, now who are they going to hire? I've heard all these names be floating around. I've heard Matt Rule, even though do you really want to hire Matt Rule after how his tenure ended in Carolina, Andrew? I don't think so.
No.
I mean, Deion Sanders has never, ever, 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 ever coached D1 football. And I know he's doing a good job at Jackson State. And they just got Travis Hunter, the number 2 prospect at Jackson State.
Which is a phenomenal job by Deion. But
it's a phenomenal get. But does he really? I mean, Deion Sanders doesn't need the money.
No.
The only person that I think could save this program is Urban Meyer, and he won't go there because you really think Urban Meyer, if he goes to Auburn, Alabama, and Georgia? Look, I think Urban Meyer was dirty as hell at Ohio State and Florida, and maybe even Utah. Do you really think, Andrew, if they get if Auburn goes out and gets Urban Meyer, that Alabama and Georgia and A&M and LSU their boosters wouldn't go digging dirt on Urban Meyer and what he did with his players?
I wouldn't touch Urban Meyer with 10-foot pole.
But he's a great college coach.
Great college coach, but after what happened with Jacksonville, unless you're a low-end program who really who can deal with the trash that comes to Urban Meyer. I don't want to get started about Urban Meyer. That's a whole other topic.
I'm saying you take his Jaguars tenure out of it. He's a phenomenal college coach.
He's a phenomenal college coach. What he did with Florida was it was great for the program, especially looking at leadership and taking charge of a locker room. That's a locker room full of guys who had issues, to say the least. You had the prophet Tim Tebow along with a bunch of criminals. One of them being Aaron Hernandez.
Jackrabbit.
Yeah, it's damn.
Personalities galore there.
Personalities galore. But
I think 44 members were either arrested or did jail time with that team?
Yeah. And it was holy cow, props to him. But after what happened to the Jaguars, I wouldn't touch him, especially with the whole bar thing and the wife. Oh, God. But here's what you got to do. You got to just assess. And I wouldn't have done this firing because you rushed it. And now it kind of stagnates your team. Will growth really happen for the rest of this year with this team? No. I mean, this team's not playing to win. They got nothing really to play for. You might as well start giving younger guys playing opportunities. And I know it's wrong to the seniors, but giving them playing opportunities and allow them to see what they got. Just so you can get some of those guys reps for next year.
Well, and the guy they named the former Auburn legend, Cadillac Williams, is their interim head coach. Now, sources close to that say he's got no chance to get the job. But what I'm saying overall is, I mean, if you wanted Urban Meyer anyway, right? After you're still paying the $21.3 million to Gus Malzahn, you're still paying the $15.3 million to Brian Harsin. Why are you now going to go and Urban Meyer, dude? I mean, because of potential dirt on him, it's going to take at least $13 million to get him a year to get him out of that. And I don't think the athletic department could afford it.
No.
But if we're going past that, who the hell wants that job?
I don't know.
At Auburn with unrealistic expectations.
It's an uphill battle every year. You have boosters expecting you to win at least 7 games and be competing. You really should, honestly, I think they expect them to compete for a top 10 spot every year. It's hard.
But the thing is at Auburn is when you're with the emergence of Georgia and now Tennessee, they fired Brian Harsin in year 2 because they see what Josh Heupel's doing at Tennessee in year 2. He's a national title contender. Difference is Gus Malzahn got another job afterwards, and the guys at Auburn loved him, and he went there. Gus Malzahn went 8-4 in a couple years of 10-2 and 11, and I think a year of 11-2 at Auburn, and he gets fired after a season where they go a little under expectations.
And you shouldn't have done that because now it sets your program back, I would say, 3 to 4 years. And why would you do that? 8-4 is not a bad record. You can't every year expect to win or be in the playoff hunt for college football. And there's only 4 teams in the country that get a shot. And really only 2 or 3 of them have a legitimate shot.
I think what's interesting to note, too, is when you talk about unrealistic expectations, Auburn's getting there because Auburn at times, man, they just make moves where I think they think they're Alabama since they beat Alabama a couple times.
Yeah.
Now they think they're Alabama, and you're not. So they keep trying to find their Saban that can steady that ship. And I know it's a rivalry down there, Auburn, Alabama, but you're not Alabama, dude. Brian Harsin, who was a great coach at Boise State. Now, I understand the recruiting at Boise State's different than the recruiting at Auburn. You got to compete with the recruiting titans of Alabama with Saban, Georgia with Smart, and Florida. But the expectations of that whole school is ridiculous. Now, here is a perfect example that I got. This is the Auburn student newspaper headline this week. You ready for this, people? Why Kirby Smart to Auburn makes the most sense for the Tigers' next football coach. Why the hell would Kirby Smart leave Georgia for Auburn? Dude's built a title contender every year. He's won a national title at Georgia, and he's just
What does Auburn offer this man he doesn't have now?
What are they gonna offer? What are they gonna offer Kirby Smart?
Some people just want to watch the world burn, right?
Why? Year what? He goes 9-3 and he's on the hot seat? Is that really what Kirby Smart wants to do? Making the same money?
He's struggling out there, folks.
Making the same money he's going to make at Georgia? And I'm supposed to act like that makes sense? This is how delusional the Auburn Tigers fan base and their boosters and their whole damn school is. Now, let me ask you this, Andrew. Two big storied programs, right now, Nebraska, Auburn, have openings. If you were a head coach, what is the more attractive job?
Nebraska.
By far. And Nebraska's a shit show. Let's get that out of the way.
Nebraska's a shit show, but historically, you can always say, I can build a really good O-line here, because you can always recruit good O-linemen there.
But it doesn't, beyond that.
But can I say, there's less expectations there, but when people got to realize the most important part about any team is a line. And if I can recruit good O-linemen and D-linemen, I'm taking that any day.
I'm beyond that. I think what you're missing here is, I would say the expectation is the same. They're both two delusional fan bases. But what I'm saying is the patience at Nebraska is there.
Yeah.
Auburn, it isn't. So I would take a job at Nebraska. Because then I think it's the path to a college football playoff at Nebraska is easier than it is at Auburn. Auburn, you got to go through, A&M's having a down year, but you got to go through Alabama. You got to go through Georgia. You got to go through usually LSU and Florida, and maybe Texas A&M. And now Ole Miss looks pretty good under Lane Kiffin. He's been named, too, as a potential candidate for the Auburn job. The question is, has he learned his lesson from earlier in his career, jumping ship every year when he was at Tennessee, leading for USC, et cetera, et cetera? Well, sticking with the SEC, it's the matchup of the Titans this week. Georgia and Tennessee. Zorn?
I'm really stuck on this one. What Tennessee has done this year has shocked everyone. I'm very happy for the program because Tennessee's kind of been irrelevant. I'm not really relevant for the past, I would say, 10 years maybe. They haven't really been the program we thought they would. And them coming out of nowhere, now being ranked number 1 against Georgia, a powerhouse that has developed the past 5 years. Really, and this is the first time we're saying two powerhouses and not mentioning Alabama. And it's really good for college football, I think. I'm going to go with the upset Georgia, technically, as rankings. But according to the spread, Georgia's favored by 8 points.
I think that's wrong. I thought Georgia's ranked 1.
Georgia's is ranked 3 here.
No, they're not. They're ranked 3 on my thing. I mean, they're ranked 1 on my thing. Tennessee's tied for second with Ohio State. All right.
Maybe the app's wrong.
Well, go to the spread. What's the spread say? Who's favored?
Georgia. But Georgia's ranked 3.
So you're taking – who are you taking?
I'm taking Georgia. Tennessee has a lot of talent. They're still young. It's still fresh. They're still riding, I think, a little bit of a hot streak. If they lose this game, it doesn't really affect them. I just think that talent-wise you're looking across the board, Georgia's better talented. I like Bennett, the quarterback for Georgia. One guy we don't even talk about enough, and I just wanted to read you his body physique real quick, is Darnell Washington, the tight end for Georgia. This man is 6'7", 270 pounds.
You're not even talking about Brock Bowers.
And he's an athlete.
No, but I'm saying Brock Bowers is starting over him.
I know. I'm saying this is insane. The tight end room for Georgia is something I'm very happy to see.
I think it might be the best tight end room in college football history.
And you also got a stout defense with Darnell Washington. I thought that might be my boy coming out. But, I got Georgia winning. It's going to be a good game. whoever loses doesn't put a smudge on the record because these two teams are so good. I don't have Tennessee falling off if they lose to Georgia. They're going to pick it back up. I don't get Georgia falling off if they lose to Tennessee. Great game where if you win, it solidifies you. Where you lose, okay, a little smudge on the record, we can come back from it. And I think these two teams will see each other in the playoffs. And if they do, the winner of this game is going to find out a lot, and so will the losers. And I think the problem is you don't want to show all your cards here if you're the head coaches, especially if there's a shot you might have to play each other in the playoffs. What do you think, Ray?
I think the SEC, this is the most competitive it's been in years.
Yes.
Because there's so many teams there. Ole Miss winning games. LSU's starting to look back to form. I mean, those are teams that might not have college football playoff potential, but are still, can beat anybody. In this game, Georgia-Tennessee, it's one of the games I'm most excited for. I think it's the most game I'm excited for since Alabama-LSU in 2011. Maybe the Joe Burrow-Trevor Lawrence matchup might come in there, but I'm super excited for this game. That being said, Georgia does have on paper, and from what I've seen, a slightly better defense than the Tennessee Volunteers have.
Yes.
But I will say this. Offensively,
it might be even
I think Tennessee's better. And the reason for that is I think Hendon Hooker is better than Stetson Bennett.
You think he's better than?
And look, I like Stetson Bennett. You know what I mean? Real underdog story. I really like him. What he's done is amazing. And he might... When I see Stetson Bennett, I think of a guy like Josh McCown a little bit. A guy who can play in the NFL but not ever start and be a franchise guy because of the intangibles. But he's a workaholic.
Yes.
He's worked his ass off to get where he is. And I really like, leading this team that is full of just, hard-hitting guys on defense. And he's just leading this team. And he's got Brock Bowers, who's going to be probably another first-round pick for Georgia. But I think it's going to come down to more of the defense. And I know people will say Georgia's defense is better, and I would agree. But I will say this. Last week when Tennessee played Kentucky, Will Levis did not look good. And people were talking about him being a potential top 2 pick at Kentucky. He looked awful. He looked terrible. They had him completely discombobulated.
Yes.
And I think when you look at this Tennessee team, Josh Heupel, what he's done in year 2, my dad has called them a sleeping giant. That's what they are. Yeah. They're a sleeping giant. And I think that Tennessee's going to win this week. I think Tennessee is going to win this week because I think, when you have guys like Jalen Hyatt and Hendon Hooker have one of the best combinations, one of the 2 best combinations with C.J. Stroud and Marvin Harrison Jr. at Ohio State in football. And I think what's important to note here, too, is a scenario which has been brought to my attention, which is very interesting, Andrew. If Georgia beats Tennessee and Alabama beats Georgia, you could potentially see 3 teams from the SEC in the college football playoff this year.
Yeah.
And if that happens, these conferences like the Big 10, the Big 12,
ain't good for them.
The ACC, maybe even the Mountain West or the American, they're going to scream bloody murder. They're going to call for somebody's head.
Well, as long as Michigan gets in, I don't think the Big Ten will be too upset.
That's another game that's coming up. Michigan, Ohio State, it's going to be like this, a David and Goliath, because the winner of that will probably make the football playoff. Yeah. But if this happens, look, Alabama, this is one of the worst teams they've had in the last 6-7 years, but they're still a top 5 team. I mean, they might be 4 or 5, maybe even 6, but that's just what we expect from Alabama to be top 2 and not 2 usually. But Tennessee, man, Josh Heupel, Tennessee fans have a lot to be excited about. A program with such a storied history. Guys like, Peyton Manning coming through there. I mean, it's just so beautiful to see what's going on. And, I know a lot of people had problems with that post-game celebration with them taking the goalpost and throwing it in the river. I have no problem with that.
I have no problem with that. And I imagine, when Archie Manning gets there, holy cow.
He's going to Texas.
He's going to Texas?
He's not going to Tennessee.
My apologies.
But
I thought he was going to Texas.
But piggybacking off of your mistake.
Come on.
No.
It's early.
No, hear me out, though. Texas, Oklahoma, when they join the SEC is going to be a complete bloodbath every year.
Well, you're seeing the slimming down of conferences. And I like it. But the problem is now...
You and I disagree.
The problem is now is that you're doing this stuff to get more, you're getting more viewership, you're getting more dollars from, from TV programs and sponsorships. But when you have a scenario now where you're going to see teams that don't make it or on the cusp of making it, don't come crying now after you've got all the money. the money talks. I don't want to hear it, Ray.
I think if we can just talk about this for a second, I don't want to spend too much time on this because I think Tennessee is going to beat Georgia. But the way the SEC is this year with all these teams competing and, the conference realignment that's incoming, the Texas and Oklahoma's going to SEC. The USC's and UCLA is going to the Big Ten because for some reason that move makes sense. You think that's good for college football?
No, not in particular, but
I thought that's what you just said. That's
so here's what it is. It's good for viewership, right? I think those conferences have a bigger name to them, so it does have a draw, But for play-wise, and then when you have disputes over the playoffs, no. And that's why I think they should really expand the playoffs next year to more teams. I know it talks about 8, 12 teams. I know the expansion is supposed to have, I believe, 2025, 2026. I think they're going 8 or 12.
I've heard 6, I've heard 8, I've heard 16. So who knows? I
would very much say if you want the money, do it. But understand that the competition now is, it's up there. You're scratching each other just to get a shot, just to play in the playoffs. Don't come screaming and crying. And why are we getting a shot? We want a shot. Shut up. No, you wanted the money. You got the money. Be quiet. Accept the money. Take it. Be humble.
But this is where it's showing that college, the conference realignment, I think, is a direct result of the new NIL deals.
Yes.
Because now that they have to pay players, they're like, all right, we
need more money.
We need more money so we can go get the big-time players. So we need to move to these conferences with better TV deals. I mean, the Big 12, which has just lost their 2 moneymakers in Texas and Oklahoma, just negotiated a huge deal, a huge TV deal. So I think going forward, and my BYU, for those of you who don't know, I root for the BYU Cougars and I root for the Maryland Terrapins in football. Maryland's more because of a proximity thing. And because we know people who actually play there. What I will say is, them going to the Big 12, I like this to be bigger football, but overall, college realignment to me is bad for the sport.
Yes.
Because, and I'm not just talking about recently, I'm still pissed off the Terrapins because college basketball, I'm a Maryland Terrapin fan. Always will be. I bleed college basketball more than I bleed college football. But I'm still upset that they left the ACC to go to the Big Ten.
You lost great rivalries with Duke.
You lost tradition.
UNC.
You lost tradition.
I know Duke always had our number for Maryland, and when I root for college basketball,
but it was
Maryland,
still always exciting.
It was always exciting, yes. And you lost that for what? Viewership. Who's your biggest rival in college?
That's not why Maryland left because Kevin Plank, the guy who founded Under Armour and the CEO of Under Armour, went to Maryland and played football. And he became a booster for Maryland football. That's why.
And they want to make Maryland a football school.
And it's not. Maryland's a basketball school. Now, Maryland is like Michigan State in this regard.
Yeah.
It's a basketball school with football upside.
Yes.
Meaning, if you go 8-4, 9-3 at Maryland, you have a job for life.
Yes.
What I'm saying is the traditions when you have guys when you have players in the ACC, I'm talking about old school. A lot of people growing up now will think Louisville and Syracuse have always been there. But they came from the old Big East. I'm talking about the traditions we had with UNC. Remember the games with Graves Vasquez was there and then Des Wells was there? It was beautiful. It was just beautiful to watch going down and playing the U in football, even though we're not a football school. The tradition there. It was better for the. It was better. It was better because you keep these old school traditions, and now you have all these conference realignment, rivalries change. I think what's cool about college football compared to the NFL is you can always have, because the school most likely is not leaving.
Yeah.
You will always have that connection to the school. So when you go back, you want to go back for the same game that you enjoyed the most when you were in college. And because of conference realignment,
you're losing that.
You're losing it because these schools, all they care about now is making money.
I agree with that. And to touch on that, I'll just put my last point with it. Maryland's always been a basketball school, and I know we're losing the point. But these schools instead of making the best interest money-wise for them, and I get it, money drives, it helps you build a school, helps you expand upon it. And football is the biggest college sport I would say there is out there. These schools should adapt to what their school sport is, not what's the money driver. And NIL has had the biggest impact on that. And you look at and I keep on going back to Deion Sanders because Deion Sanders has really shown, how much NIL has affected, players. Small schools like Jackson State can't offer huge NIL deals. They don't have the funding. You look at what's happened with them this summer. They didn't have clean drinking water for camp.
What they can offer is tradition.
And they offer tradition. And that's what schools need to get back to with NIL being a problem where, you can't out-recruit these big programs that have all these, donors, have all these, funding. You have to go back to tradition. And tradition is what makes college sports so much enjoyable. It's what brings, there's a special feeling when you go to a college game compared to NFL. Like, those guys are playing for money. They are. Yes, that's all they're there for. They're for the check. Those guys there are playing for a shot. They're playing for the school. They're playing for themselves. And that's why the energy...
For their education, for their future.
That's why the energy, the commitment, and the passion is so much more higher at a collegiate sporting event than it is a professional sporting event. And NIL has kind of ruined that.
I think what's important to know when you said when schools are football schools or basketball schools is you have to know who you are.
Yes.
Like, the best example of this is Kentucky. Clear as day basketball school.
Not even be a football school.
No, they don't. But they're doing a great job at being competitive at football. You can do that. You just can't like what Michigan State's doing. You have a Hall of Fame coach in Tom Izzo, but because Mel Tucker had one good year, you're going to break the bank and almost bankrupt the athletic department to go pay him. Auburn right now, I forgot to mention with Brian Harson's buyout, Bruce Pearl's making $6 million a year because he's done a great job with the Auburn program. You can have good programs in football or basketball or football schools. The problem is you have to know who you are. And when I was talking about the Terps, they're putting too much emphasis on football instead of basketball, in my opinion. And that is, when Maryland basketball is good, and I'm talking top 10 in the country, College Park is bumping.
Oh, yeah.
College Park, man. It's crazy. I've been to a couple games down there, and it gets loud. They get into it. College basketball is better because I'm going to be honest with you. This is not even me being, biased. Maryland's a top 15 basketball school in the country. They're not 10, but they might be 13, 14, 15. You know what I mean? When you think about it. I mean, would you disagree? Kentucky, UNC, Duke, Syracuse, schools like that with Indiana, the Hoosiers, with all the promise and all the, tradition and all the winning. Maryland has been one of the more successful basketball colleges. But they're a basketball school. Stop trying to be a football school. That was the point I was making. Yeah, but I think you hit the nail on the head with the NIL.
I agree, and I get it. College players want to be paid for their likeness, but it's kind of affecting the sport at this point, and I don't like it. I don't like where it's heading. I wish it wasn't this way. I like the early to mid 2000s approach to college athletics, where you're playing for a degree. I think we should move on, Ray. NFL trade deadline deals. We got a couple of them. I'll say the ones real quick, and then we'll go down the list. And I
just want to say before you say it, this was one of the busiest deadlines I can remember.
This was awesome. I loved it. It's big names being traded throughout the league, kind of adjusting teams' playoff hopes, I would say. Some more so futures, but we'll see. The big ones we're going to talk about today, there's 5 of them. Roquan Smith, Bradley Chubb, Chase Claypool, T.J. Hockenson, and Calvin Ridley. I say we start with Roquan Smith and your Ravens, Ray. What do you like? Give me a grade, and do you like it long-term, short-term? Just give me your opinion on it.
I love it short-term. Long-term, I don't know if we're going to be able to re-sign Roquan Smith. I know at times I've been saying I don't think he's as good as everyone else. And I think what's important to note is Roquan Smith, his contract's up at the end of the year, so I think getting a second and a fifth for the Bears is good. But overall, I would say I think the Bears win this trade long term because I don't think we'll re-sign them, and they got a second and a fifth. I'm going to go with the Ravens get a B, but it could easily be an A if they win a Super Bowl because Roquan Smith is a really good piece.
I would give him like a B minus. I like the trade for if this season they can help. If it helps, I know the defense has had its issues.
But if you agree, if they win the Super Bowl, it moves to an A.
Moves to an A. Secondary has been iffy, but I think the secondary has the pieces there, so you didn't need to trade for anyone. I would like for them to trade for a wideout. That's why I'm giving you minus. There was a more pressing issue at wideout with Bateman being injured. Duvernay's number 1, and your best target's your tight end Mark Andrews, who
or Isaiah Likely. I think they should start using Likely more in the slot.
But you should have traded for another weapon for Lamar. He has not gotten the help he deserves. I would have liked another weapon, but a B minus. It's a great piece for your front seven.
I would have liked to see them go out and get a guy like DJ Moore or Jerry Jeudy and give up maybe a second in 2024, and just go all in on the season. I give the Bears for this package. I think they could have got a fourth somewhere else, but
I give an A.
I gave them an A minus. I think it's a really good deal, but at the same time, the Bears have looked competitive in previous weeks, and they just lost their two best players by trading Robert Quinn a week ago, and now they just trade Roquan Smith.
I get the Robert Quinn one. He's aging, and he's a big contract.
Oh, I agree. That one I didn't bother me, but I'm saying you lose two defensive pieces when you look like you actually – I mean, they have the same record as the Packers, I believe.
Yes, but I don't think they're going anywhere.
They're not.
It is what it is. I'm not.
But they don't know that.
Yeah, they don't know that, but we'll see what happens with it. Next one, Bradley Chubb goes to Miami. What do you think, Ray?
I gave the Dolphins an A. So basically, the Dolphins this year, their biggest problem is their offense has been explosive when Tua's on the field.
Yes.
They had Tyreek Hill and Waddle, both in the top 5, I believe, in receiving yards. Tua's having a year that's going to establish him as the Miami franchise quarterback. But they need a defender. They need a game wrecker. And that's what Bradley Chubb is. He has been the stalwart on that Broncos defense since Von Miller left. And they got Chubb and a 5th rounder for a 1st to 4th and Chase Edmonds. You're not going to use Chase Edmonds anyway. And Bradley Chubb's better than any 1st rounder you're going to have. So why wouldn't you trade it for a player you know is good rather than to throw a dart on a player who is a maybe? So I give them an A. I give the Broncos for this haul a 1st and a 4th. It's a pretty good deal. You get a 1st-round pick back that you got for Russell Wilson. I'm going to give the Broncos a B because you lose your best pass rusher, but at the same time you get a 1st-round pick back.
Yeah. I'm going to give the Broncos B+. I'm going to give the Dolphins an A. I like this trade for the Dolphins. Melvin Ingram, he's 36-year-old. He has not been the guy you signed. Your best pass rusher is Jalen Phillips, who I like. I think he's talented, but he's 23 years old. Bradley Chubb brings the experience they need, plus an upside, and it looks like they're going to sign him to a long-term deal. He's 26. He's about to enter his prime. I really like this trade. It kind of goes back to what you said. This offense is explosive, but you haven't had the pass rush you need on defense to kind of keep teams in check, to hold quarterbacks accountable for marching down the field and requiring your offense to put up large sums of yardage and touchdowns. This helps them. This, I think, can solidify them as a playoff threat and not just a team that we have to be perfect or explosive on offense in order to win games. This kind of puts a staple in your defense. It gives you a great pass rushers and give problems for defenses. Really solidifies the defense. I like it a lot.
Well said.
Next one, Ray. I believe it's going to be Chase Claypool.
So first of all, what doesn't make sense here is you trade Roquan Smith and Robert Quinn, right? But then you go and get Claypool, who I believe his contract's up at the end of the next year.
Yes.
And Claypool has not looked like the same receiver we thought he was going to be rookie year when he caught 11 touchdowns.
No.
Not even close. He's been relegated to kind of more of a deep ball guy since Kenny Pickett's been there. So they traded a 2nd-round pick to get him. Not the 2nd-round pick they got for the Ravens. They traded their own 2nd-round pick, which is most likely going to be higher than the Ravens pick, to get Claypool. I gave the Steelers an A. This is a really good fetch for the Steelers. Maybe build back some of that depth on the O-line with this pick. I gave the Bears a C.
I'm going to give the Bears a D. If you're rebuilding, you're rebuilding. I don't get it, man. I'm going to be completely honest. Yes, Claypool's talented. Claypool has upside. But Claypool, from what we've seen from last year, especially after the little celebration dance, oh, yeah, that was fantastic.
Asking to play music in practice, that's why they were losing, stuff like that.
Yeah. It doesn't make sense why you trade for him. He's not. He's a head case, and not just like he's a problem, but he's stupid, I think. It does help Justin Fields get a better target, but the O-line is still a mess. Steelers, great trade. Great trade, I'll give him an A. You got George Pickens, and he is a playmaker, and you still have my boy, Soul Surfer there. Deontay Johnson. And you're not really doing much this year. You got to realize, hey,
they can't run the ball.
We can't run the ball. We need to get some draft capital. You can probably use this pick for a pretty good, solid O-lineman. That's what if they use it for that, great. That's what they should use it for. And you got talent receiver. You really don't need Claypool there. You're not going to resign him to a long-term deal. I think this is the highest you can get for him now. You're not going to use him as a 2 right now, and stunt Pickens is developed to get his stats up so you can trade him. So I like the pick. I like the trade for the Steelers. I like the compensation of a 2nd round you get from him. It kind of helps you when you're in the offseason. And Bears, I don't get it, man. Like, why? And I get it, Darnell Mooney's number one there. This doesn't really help you. And I get it, maybe it's better for
Mooney and
Fields to
Claypool are
build.
kind of similar.
They're very similar. And it's like Claypool, I was watching announcers saying behind him yesterday. He ran around over the middle as a crossing route, and instead of running and keep on running, he stops and then he continues to run, and the defender catches up. It's like, why are you stopping on a crossing route? The football intelligence for Claypool, I don't think, is there.
Well, Chase Claypool reminds me of a bigger Torrey Smith.
Yes.
He can run one route. Mm-hmm. And, it's the go route. Mm. And look, that can be very valuable if you have a quarterback like Joe Flacco.
Yeah.
Problem is they don't.
They have Justin Fields.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't really know what the Bears are thinking on this one, especially if you're going to retool, right? Because I don't think it's a rebuild yet.
No.
Because Fields is supposed to come in there and play. I know it's it's kind of a rebuild, but at the same time, it's year 2 of Fields. You're hoping to get capital. Why are you trading that away? Especially if this was a 4th rounder, it changes my whole perspective on this trade.
Well, next is TJ Hawkinson in Minnesota, which I did not see coming at all.
No.
And I have some mixed feelings about. So, Ray, go ahead.
I have very mixed feelings about it because in one way it opens up, you take coverage away from Justin Jefferson, who hasn't scored a touchdown since week 1. Missing persons report in fantasy, by the way. Mm-hmm. But I think they gave up a lot to get this guy. They gave up a 2nd, a 3rd, a 4th, and conditional 4th. Now, on the Lions' part, you lose, other than Amon-Ra St. Brown, your most dynamic weapon.
Yes.
Because he's a guy who... The Lions' offense is not the problem.
No.
Their defense can't stop a nosebleed. So if you're going to make this move, they got the picks. I'm going to give the Lions a B+ just because they lost a dynamic weapon. Mm-hmm. I'm also going to give the Vikings a B+.
I'm going to give the Vikings a C. Because
really?
Not because I have a problem with them trading for another weapon. You got Irv Smith there, and historically...
He's hurt. That's why he's out. He's got a grade 1 ankle sprain. He's out 8 to 10 weeks.
I get that. But also, historically, this team has not used their tight ends well. I get new head coach, offensive mind, okay. But tight end, it's always been receivers with you guys. And do you really need TJ Hawkinson?
I think... If I can just butt in real quick, I think it's more of to take the coverage away from Jefferson.
Yeah.
Because what they've been doing is they've been able to put a spy on Thielen while double covering Jefferson.
Yes.
Because Irv Smith, not a downfield receiver. No. It's a check down, and they have a middle linebacker there to get a 2-yard gain.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to open up a lot for that offense, which is why I gave him a B+. I just think they gave up a lot to get him.
Yeah, it was it's a 2023 second rounder, 2024 third rounder, 2023 fourth rounder,
and a couple in potential conditional picks depending on the production.
And also a 2024 conditional 4th round pick. You gave up 4 picks for a guy. I get it, but tight ends aren't a number 1 receiving threat.
This is not Travis Kelce we're talking about.
Kelce.
This is not prime Jimmy Graham. This is not prime Gronk.
This is a very dynamic player.
This is the 5th best tight end in the league. Yeah. That's who you got.
Yeah, and it's like you gave a lot of draft capital and future depth for a guy who, he can help you now, but in the long term, you're kind of capping, you're handcuffing yourself. And then for the Lions, I'd give him a B+. I really do like it. I think you got to understand where you're at. I get it, Sheets, your second best player on offense behind it.
It's definitely going to help. It's definitely going to help your depth.
It's going to help your depth, but
I'm gonna say this just because I'm in a weird position here. Mm-hmm. So I had Hawkinson and Jefferson both on my fantasy team.
Yeah.
And my friends would tell me, "Oh, it's gonna be great for you."
No, it ain't.
Hawkinson's gonna take targets away from Jay Jettis. So maybe it'll open up Jefferson for a long ball every now and then, but I don't love it from a fantasy perspective either.
Well, here's the last one, and this is my most favorite one.
Yeah.
The Jaguars trade for Calvin Ridley, a 2nd and a 5th round pick.
That could turn into a 4th.
Could turn into a 4th. He's been suspended for the rest of this year.
For betting on the Falcons to beat the Jaguars last year.
Yes, it is so
poetry.
It's poetry. It's
beautiful
symbolic.
Poetry.
I love it. Trade-wise, I'm going to be very biased. I'm going to give my Jaguars an A. You're not going to see this pay off this year at all because he's suspended. No. But you got T-Law a number 1 option. And that's what he's needed this year. And I get it. You need an alignment. I think they're going to address it with their 1st round pick. You're going to get an alignment. The defense, I don't have any problems with. You can still get some more depth on the defense. But just speaking from what's the problem with the Jaguars' offense is O-line and a number 1 receiver. Your only problem now is O-line. Him and Christian Kirk combined next year I think will be a scary duo. We'll see if they bring back Evan Ingram. He's on a 1-year deal. This team offensively, I know this year I had expectations for them. They're gone. I'm heartbroken. But for next year,
But they're not far away.
they're not far away, and this helps you step closer to that goal of being a playoff team and win the one of the worst divisions in football. I love it. For the Falcons, I'll give it a B. Like, yeah, I get it. You got talent. You just drafted Drake London. It's not the end of the world. You know, you got a replacement for him, but him and Drake London combined is a scary threat, especially if you get the right quarterback in there.
Plus Kyle Pitts is still there.
Plus Kyle Pitts. But I get it. There was too many cooks in the kitchen. You want to get one out. Makes sense. He's suspended.
Cap room too.
Yeah.
So what did you give the Falcons?
Give Falcons a B.
I'm giving the Falcons a C, and I'm giving the Jaguars an A for the reason you just mentioned. They get a second round. They gave up a second round pick
For number one player.
for another one receiver. So now you can use your first round pick and plus some free agency money to go out and get help on the offensive line. For the Falcons, Ridley's deal, which signed a couple years ago, looked a little ridiculous. Now it looks very team friendly. So you give up that you could pair with a dynamic offense for whoever your quarterback you're going to draft in the future is. So I think from that perspective, it's not really going to do much for the Falcons. It could do wonders for the Jaguars.
Yeah. I love the trade. I'm very excited. Well, we won't see him till next year, but get him in the locker room, get him in the training facility, just get him acclimated to T-Law as soon as you can. I think it's going to be a dynamic option for T-Law. It's going to really
And now
open the offense.
you can move Christian Kirk back to his natural position of the slot, and I think you go to work. I think you go to work there. I think maybe third, fourth round, you think about drafting a tight end. That's usually prime. Maybe Brock Bowers falls. Maybe no one wants the tight end because I know athletically, he's good, but is he good enough like Kyle Pitts? Kyle Pitts at the combine went from a second-round pick to a first-round pick.
Yeah.
So who knows? We'll wait and see. Maybe they get another weapon as well.
I agree. It's going to be interesting to see what my Jaguars have in the future. I know we keep on saying that. I would like to see them produce, but I'm not too mad.
No, I mean, that is a good get for the Jaguars, getting a number one receiver in Calvin Ridley, who has experience. It's a veteran presence. I think the Jaguars this offseason, on top of the line they need to go out and get veterans. Because this team is young and inexperienced, and you see that late in games.
Yeah.
So if you get some veterans in there, I'm talking about maybe you go and sign, some 39-year-olds to be backups.
Yeah.
I know it sounds terrible, but it's
experience.
It's experience.
Yeah.
It's all about being a mentor. That's why I think they should go out and get a Colt McCoy to mentor Trevor Lawrence.
Yes.
Give you some firsthand experience.
I agree with you completely. And also, with the James Robinson trade, we haven't really talked about that much. Allowing Travis Etienne to be number one.
Etienne is going to be a stud.
Going to be scary. If he can stay healthy, this team is poised to be a dynamic offense.
I agree.
For the foreseeable future when they address the line.
I agree.
With that said, Ray, I think that's all. It's one of our shorter episodes now. I kind of like it.
I think we covered a lot, though.
We covered a lot more. We are removing pick'ems from future episodes. It's just taking too long, guys. I know some of you guys like that, but we can't really cover as much topics as we usually do when we do pick'ems. So we're going to be removing pick'ems. We will come back and reassess if we want to bring them back, but it just takes too long. And we want to get more content in, especially with what's happening week to week. I think, maybe in slower seasons, we will start seeing pick'ems from different sports or watch about games that we like.
We'll continue doing it for big events like,
Super Bowl playoff matchups.
World Series, how we did this year.
Yes, but the week-to-week pick'ems we're going to be taking out. If you guys have any other, questions or any suggestions regarding the format of it, we love hearing from you guys.
Absolutely.
It really does, we always want to hear new stuff and how we can make the podcast better. This is more of a serious episode, especially at the beginning, but we've lightened up as episodes going on.
Cut KyrieIrving.org.
Cut KyrieIrving.org. We're going to start the website. Is there any final words from you, Ray, before we call it a day?
No, thanks for listening, and we're looking to expand to other platforms. Currently, either Google Podcast or Apple Podcasts as well.
Yes, and I have not been as vocal with my promotion this week of the episodes. That is on me, guys. I've been very busy with my schedule. My schedule is freeing up soon, though, so we will be getting videos soon. I promise you that shortly. Yeah. That has been on me, but we're going to be getting it up. We're going to be having video. It's going to be good. With that said, thank you guys for listening this week. Ray and I had a really good time with this episode, and we're trying to get a special guest on for Friday. We'll keep you updated with that. But with that, it's been the episode. Thank you guys for listening, and have a great rest of your week, guys. See you.